The Brown Park Podcast is brought to you by Grow Clinics. They're Australia's leading hair transplant clinics, and you can go to growclinics.com.au. Hello, Dion.
Christo, how are you?
Very good. Today's guest is somebody that you brought to the table. He's a Paralympian.
Yeah, Paralympian. His name is Brenden Hall. The reason I wanted him on is because I actually love watching the Paralympics. Just seeing people adapt with injuries or amputations or whatever. It's really cool to watch.
So we're going to chat to him today on the Brown Park Podcast.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Question.
Yes.
It was your youngest son's birthday recently.
Well, I've only got one son, so yeah,
Son,
his birthday,
well, that
yeah.
you know of, but okay, yeah. But he had a birthday recently. How'd it go?
It was good, man. He celebrated his 7th birthday, but we had a funny moment. Kind of funny, kind of not funny, but was funny now that you look back on it in retrospect. You know, those kind of situations.
So funny for a parent.
So I have 3 kids. So my middle child, Noah, is going through that phase of her life where she is doing cartwheels and handstands and anything at any time. Like you've got a daughter. Girls go through that stage. They just want to do cartwheels and handstands everywhere they go.
Yep. In the media room, out the back, yeah, anyway.
So in the lounge room, Noah was doing cartwheels, handstands, whatever she could do. Jessie, at that point, runs in blindly into the lounge room, and as middle child is coming down with her legs, full on kicks him in the guts.
Oh, karate chop or karate kick.
He goes down like a sack of shit.
Winded?
He's on the ground, winded. It was his first winding.
Oh.
So he's on the ground, gasping for air, not knowing what this feeling was. And he's going, and we're going, just breathe gently. It's okay. You've been winded. You're fine. I'm going to die.
Well, it feels like it in his defense.
And because he hasn't been winded, it's fair enough, right?
Yeah.
And so he sort of composes himself, and he's sitting on my wife Sarah's lap, and he's still all teary. He's like, I thought I was gonna die on my birthday.
His birthday and his death day.
And that was his birthday. And now, like, out of all of that, every time we go, you know, somebody goes, oh, how was your birthday? He's like, I thought I was going to die on my birthday. All right, let's get to today's guest.
Yep, today we've got Brenden Hall, who's a Paralympian, and he's about to jump on. So, Brenden, g'day, mate.
Thanks very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Now, we were just having a chat off air. You guys have a link. How do you have a link?
I work with Brendan's father. He heads up operations for the company I work for, and he told me about his son, and I was somewhat aware of Brendan's journey beforehand, and I went, hey, can we get him on the podcast? And there we go.
Well, we'll get into all that in a second, because you are a champion Paralympic medalist, gold medalist, everything. Does he then, and we were saying this off air, does he ever sponsor you? Have you had an inbuilt sponsor from, day dot?
No, I guess not. Not really. But I think on a personal level, I would definitely say that I'm very grateful to the sponsorship of mum and dad early on in my career, especially dad. Otherwise, I definitely would not have had the opportunity to go and make teams to sort of, accomplish my dreams.
Well, see, my parents sponsored me, but I've achieved nothing. So, at least you gave your parents something back in return. You became an Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah, hopefully I managed to be able to give them something to be proud of. And now I think they're now just proud and happy to be grandparents for the first time. So, yeah, hopefully, still managed to keep them happy.
Good job.
Let's talk about your story. You have achieved a phenomenal success in your chosen profession in swimming. And you got 17 gold, 8 silver, 7 bronze. But it's how you got to this point that it's absolutely astounding. Let's go right back to when you were little and what resulted in you getting here.
Rightio. Try and remember a little way back then. It's a few years ago now.
Yeah.
So obviously at the age of 6, I was unfortunate enough to contract chickenpox as a 6-year-old young fella, unfortunately, which led to complications, and those complications led to a DVT, deep vein thrombosis in my lower right limb. Because of that, obviously the process is to blood clot. Essentially, they try to thin it that's the way they go. But unfortunately, for reasons unknown, when they tried to thin the clot and get rid of it to fix it, it just progressively got worse. And in that process, they essentially lost me for about 27 and a half minutes and managed to get me back, and pretty much came to mum and dad and said, hey, look, you got a pretty tough decision to make here. And like, obviously I wasn't aware of this. I don't really remember anything beforehand either. I remember my brother having chicken pox, and then obviously that's probably the last childhood memory that I really kind of remember as such. And so, yeah, they gave mum and dad the decision. They're like, oh, we can keep trying to thin the clot. And that's the process we go down, and potentially risk his life again each time we do it. Or we can guarantee if we amputate through the knee, he will most likely go on to have a long, happy, fulfilling life just with one less leg. And thankfully, I think in the end of the day, mum and dad did pick the right decision. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't be sitting here today chatting to you guys, or having the opportunity to go on and represent my country and accomplish my dream of winning a Paralympic gold medal.
So you essentially went to hospital and then woke up without one leg. How did that go when you woke up? As a 6-year-old, what is that look like for you in that moment?
There's a couple of moments that I kind of remember. Apparently, I was in ICU for quite a while. I woke up in ICU a couple of times, but I don't really remember any of that. The funny thing is I also lost, because I was essentially gone for 27 and a half minutes, I also lost the majority of my hearing. And so I'm like fully deaf in my right ear. So the headphone in my right ear is just for show. No. I've only got like a little bit of hearing in my left ear. So if I was at school and university, I wear a hearing aid so that I can hear everything. So when I woke up in hospital, I was obviously at that age where I was kind of discovering the world and discovering how everything else works in the world. And I kind of got really, you kind of get interested in, what's going on with life. And as a youngster, you're fascinated by the fact that lizards lose their tail and they grow back, lizards grow their tail back. So I was like, oh yeah, in my mind, I was like, lizards grow their tail back. To me, as a 6-year-old, I hadn't comprehended the fact that only applies to like lizards. But I was telling mum and dad every time I'd wake up in the ward, I was like, it's fine. Like, it's going to grow back. Just give it a few days. Like, it's going to grow back. So it took them a while to sort of get that message through to me that it's like, no, this is going to be permanent. Like, your leg's not there anymore, buddy. You're going to have to sort of accept it and moved on. I think to me, it felt like it took a while, but I was in hospital for a while, but to me it was a short time. And in that short time, I was like, all right, well, I want to get out of here. I want to get out. I want to see things. I want to get back into things. I want to get back to school. I want to see my best mate, all that sort of stuff. And I think at the end I was like, okay, well, how can I get moving? Like, what's the process here? Do I get a leg? Do I get a wheelchair? Someone talked me through all this, because I literally just was like, that was how my process of moving on.
So were you a sporty kid before this? If you can remember that, or do your parents say that you were sporty before then?
I wouldn't probably label the term sporty. I was definitely adventurous and willing to outdoorish and willing to try stuff. I had started swimming. I was in Learn to Swim. Yep. Mum and dad put me in Learn to Swim at a really young age. They enjoyed going to the beach, so they wanted me to be like self-aware in the water and know what I was doing, make sure that I was going to be safe. And I had slowly like moved up all the Learn to Swim squad levels. And I think at that point I had sort of just kind of started like they call like mini squad or something, where you do the first few laps of a 25-meter pool. And I was kind of really loving that. I think I was at that age where like you start to sign on to all the other sports. So I was kind of keen to give all that a go, but obviously kind of railroaded that idea pretty quickly. Essentially, I wasn't going to go out and didn't have my own 2 feet to stand on anymore. And the only thing I remember is that when I woke up in hospital, there was 3 distinct things that I wanted. I wanted someone to bring me a McFlurry, because I was like, I loved ice cream. And at that point I had a bit of hospital food, and hospital food was not good. I'd already pulled the feeding tube out of my nose and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, someone bring me a McFlurry. I wanted to know if my best mate, who I'd met a few years before, which is hard to say when you're that young, but he literally was my best mate back then. Wanted to know if I was going to be in his class going into grade 2, I think it was. And I was like, these are the things that I'm concerned about. And then the third one was I wanted to know how quickly I could just get back in the water. I just wanted to know, like, when could someone tell me I could get back in the water? So I think the fact that I was already drawn back to the water after losing my leg, before I'd actually sort of had a true interest in the sport, is kind of like almost like alarm bells, or, you know, those early warning signs are like, oh, maybe there's going to be something happening here in this space, but, you know, we're just going to have to wait and see.
Wow, imagine that. I mean, all that going on, but one of your main concerns is that you're going to be in your mate's class in grade 2. If I like that when you're older, because if you're older, it's a totally different story, right?
Mate, you lost me at McFlurry.
Yeah. Right. I was like, that was the most important thing. I didn't really care about, was my hearing coming back? Was my leg coming back? I was just like, can someone bring me in McFlurry? And I think it might have been my grade 1 teacher who ended up bringing me some ice cream to visit me while I was at hospital. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that was probably like the most exciting part.
So returning to school, I guess, physically different. How did that go for a kid in grade 2?
It was pretty awkward to start with. I went back to school. At that point, I think it was towards the end of grade 2 that I finally ended up going back. So I was only back at school for a couple of weeks for grade 2 anyway. I was in a wheelchair for the first 2-3 months or whatever, while I was going through that process of learning about prosthetics and legs and how they're going to work and what it'll look like, all this sort of stuff. So I felt a bit hindered in my ability to kind of interact with all my peers. Yeah. Obviously, I couldn't go and run around on the oval like they did, but it sort of didn't really stop me from trying to figure out how to get the wheelchair down, you know, a hill full of grass, sticks and rocks and whatnot. I remember being pushed around for cross country by a group of dads in grade 2 from all my friends. Dads got together and they ran the grade 2 cross country track at school while I was in the wheelchair, just purely because I wanted to get points for my team, my sport house in grade 2. So I think that was probably like the point of like, okay, well, if I'm going to contribute to team or sport in a way, I'll figure out a way to do it, even if I have to rope a bunch of guys together to push me around in a wheelchair, which was probably, hopefully, none of them felt like they were going to have a heart attack that day, but I feel like that was like the point where I was like, okay, maybe I can do anything.
That's great. I mean, I wish I had somebody to push me around during school cross country back in the day, but different story.
This is the Brown Park Podcast. Now, a word from our sponsors.
Big thanks to Grow Clinics for continuing to support the Brown Park Podcast. And has your confidence dimmed alongside your thinning hair? Do you find yourself avoiding mirrors, hiding beneath hats, longing for the days your hair danced in the wind? Well, you're not alone. Hair loss can take a toll, but it doesn't have to steal your joy. With Grow Clinics, you can rewrite your story. They offer a path to rediscover your vibrant self, a journey towards a thicker, healthier head of hair, and their innovative techniques delivered by compassionate experts can transform not just your appearance, but your perspective. At Grow Clinics, they understand the emotional weight of hair loss. They believe in empowering you with personalised solutions, honest advice, and unwavering support. You're not just a patient, you're a partner in rediscovering your confidence strand by strand. So don't let hair loss dim your inner glow. Take the first step towards a fuller, happier you. Contact Grow Clinics today for a free consultation and learn how they can help you rewrite your narrative at growclinics.com.au.
This is the Brown Park Podcast with Christo and Dion. Now back to the show.
So at what point did you go from being, okay, well, I'm good in the pool to being, I'm great in the pool, or I have the potential to be great in the pool? Because, your success is phenomenal.
Yeah, so I was exposed, the thing is, I was exposed to Sydney 2000, which is the year directly after I lost my leg. And it resonated with me that a guy got up, pretty much the same disability as me, swam for Australia and won a medal. And it came to me that I was like, oh, okay, so there is like, I can actually go and compete in the Paralympics and represent my country. Like, that's an actual reality for me. It's a choice. I can try and make something of sport. And I was like, at that point, it's a dream. Every kid has that dream. And probably didn't realize that I was going to be that good until it got to the point where I sort of had a few coaches along the way, and like, okay, yeah. And then this other coach kind of encouraged me to come to him, and we thought we'd have a crack at it. And then that point in time, I was still swimming able body, and I was almost medaling as an able-bodied kid.
Really?
And then they're like, oh, you need to get picked up and get classified so you can get into disability sport as such. I was like, okay, yeah, cool, how's all that? So I had a few people guide me through all that process and eventually got classified. And I think this was like 2005, and it's when I moved to this, my new coach, who I was with for an extended period of time. It was like 12 or 13 years. And it was at the end of that year in 2005, and he's like sort of sat down with me after I'd had my first experience racing as a para-athlete in school sport, and I'd done all right. I figured won a few medals, like nothing too special, and I was like, okay, this is fun. Like, I love it. I love being in the water. It's where I feel most normal, feel most at home. And he sort of sat me down. He's like, okay, mate, so in 3 years' time, Beijing's coming around. Like, you're going to be 14 years of age, turning 15. Like, what do you think? Do you want to try and represent Australia? And I was like, sure, why not? I'll give it a crowd. Like, well, at that point in time, I was probably 10 or 9. So, like, you're asking a 9-year-old, like, to me, I was like, I don't care. Am I getting ice cream after this? Yeah. I was like, sure, why not? Let's give it a crack. So then, yeah, it kind of like sort of like snowballed from there. From that point on in 2005, it literally just got bigger and bigger. And as it got closer to 2008, I made my first junior team in 2007. And I sort of had realized my potential as a distance swimmer, so 400 meters and above. And I'd started breaking all the age records in the 400 freestyle. It was around that point I was like, okay, we might have a shot here. And then I made my first junior swim team, Australian swim team in 2007, went to the Arafura Games. You know, I broke like the national age record for the 400 freestyle by a large margin. And I knew that like trials were in 7 months or so. And by then I needed to drop another 10, 15 seconds to possibly try and make qualifying for the Paralympic team in 2008. So I knew it was going to be a big jump. And I just literally, for those next 7 months, threw everything behind it. And I'm not really one to shy away from a challenge. I still wanted to do well in school. So I was going into grade 10 and yeah, put everything into it. Thanks to mum and dad. They helped me all the way. And all of a sudden, you know, dream of wearing green and gold becomes an instant reality in 2008 when I made my first team as a 14-year-old, one of the youngest at the time. And then that's when you sort of like, I was like, okay, maybe I am pretty good.
Like, you really, it's at that point you realize, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a late realization, and I'm just kind of like lucky that I'm able to do something that I love a lot.
Yeah.
And have the opportunity to represent my country at the same time. It's an honor that I consider quite like deeply to be thankful for. And yeah, it just sort of goes back to that decision that mum and dad made. I feel like, well, maybe if they'd chosen a different decision, I wouldn't have been able to do all that.
Yeah, and I mean, just even the thought of losing your leg and then the swimming getting you to this point, because it gave you something to focus on, I guess, rather than your disability. It gave you a focus on what you can do, and to be so good at something and represent your country, you know, I guess the overall focus would have just kept driving you forward.
Yeah, pretty much. So as that whole time, I think primary school, I encountered a few bullies here and there, but as I got older and I looked back on it, and like all the bullying, put in quotation marks, because when I looked back on it, it was like all the older grades kind of got into it, and they were like, oh, we'll call him a name, something to do with his leg. It's like, you know, like robot leg, Terminator dude. And I get older and I'm looking back at all this, and they'd sort of like try and exclude me just by like labeling what they see with my leg. And I'm now looking back and I was like, is that the best they've got with like the name calling? Like I now walk around and I just feel like metal leg. Yes, that's what I've got. Thank you. Like, yeah, but I'm the original. Whereas like kids walk around now and they see me in the shopping center and they're like, oh, hey, mom, dad, it's Terminator leg coming. And I think that's the best thing ever. Like, yeah, right. For sure. It's like, you know, you wear it like pretty much like a uniform, and it's just like something that's like, yeah, you know, you stand out from the crowd and encourage kids to kind of like pay attention to it so that they can learn about it and it becomes normal. And I'm actually thankful that they did call me all those names, because it just made me realize that is that like the best they had going on in their life, that they had to belittle someone because he had a different leg compared to everybody else. So it's sort of like, I was like, stopped me at the time, but then it's just those things sort of make you stronger, I guess. Yeah.
Sounds like you wear it as a badge of honor now.
Yeah, pretty much essentially that. It's like a badge of honor, and there's not a day that goes by where I try to help sort of educate the future generations that like this sort of thing now, it's normal. It's a reality, especially with like Brisbane 2032 coming up. You know, you're going to have like the largest amount of like para athletes coming to Brisbane in like 10 years time. And there's going to be a bunch of different disabilities here and there, you know, have robot legs, robot arms, like robot wheelchairs, like you name it, the whole shebang. It's going to be literally going to be a kid's paradise of like Terminators for them.
Terminator paradise. Yes, I was going to say that.
Do you think there comes a limit on the technology of what people should be allowed to compete with in the Paralympics, or do you think it's just fair game, anything can happen?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, it's not even within the Paralympics, like and not even within performance enhancing drugs. Like, take swimming, for example. They literally had designed suits that could float in water.
Yeah.
If you think back to 2009 and 2010, or even a bit earlier, they started to introduce them just after 2008. And like these suits, you could literally put them in the water and they would float.
Yeah.
So, you know, and swimmers were swimming times that like you'd never seen before. So that's how far technology can take you. And I know in para sport, it's regulated quite heavily, especially with like prosthetic limbs and running and the aerodynamics of wheelchairs and wheelchair racing and how limbs can be, what joints can be used in cycling and all that sort of stuff. So they do try and keep an eye on all that so that like the technology doesn't push it further than what the actual human limit can withstand. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because, you know, like a running blade, so a prosthetic running leg, it's pretty much almost mimicking or even stronger than what can be produced in an able-bodied limb sometimes, and the speed is that they can get going if they can get going properly. So that was it's probably a bad example, but I'm sure you all heard about Oscar Pistorius and the whole saga he went through to try and be able to run in the Olympics, and they were essentially saying no because he was cheating running on 2 artificial limbs compared to normal legs that were actually going to be advantageous for him to compete. And it's kind of it's not the best example, but that's the kind of thing.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you couldn't strap a flipper to your prosthetic leg and then swim, right? Because it'd be a massive event.
Essentially, like there are swimmers out there who do that. They put a prosthetic limb on with a fin on to do certain training sets, and that's not allowed to be done competing because of it offers advantage. So yeah, that hopefully like the rules are a lot stricter because there's a lot of technology and like the wheelchairs and the limbs and all that sort of stuff that do need to be used for other sports. So, I like to think they could have keep a close eye on all that.
But like a lot of sports, okay, so I'm a big fan of the Formula One, using that as an example, the technology that goes into the cars then comes across to everyday life. You know, the fuel efficiencies that they do in these cars then come across to our cars and something like that. That would happen in the Paralympics as well. The technology that people are building to make you guys perform better would then transpire to everyday life for others, wouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%. So like some of the technology, like I'm pretty sure some of the technology is like I'm walking around on a limb that's probably like an F1 car. It's the concept of everything. So there's definitely certain areas that makes everyday life for someone such as myself 100% easier. But then when you're trying to even the playing field, when you go back to sport, that's where they sort of start bringing in the rules and all those fine print items where to make sure that we're still trying to keep this competitive space as fair play as possible. It's the same, like it's those rules in F1. They try to apply that to sport as in all sports. So yeah, it's just really hard to monitor when that technology is developing so quickly.
This is the Brown Park Podcast.
Real fellas.
Hey team, we need to take a quick second to talk about Grow Clinics, the proud sponsors of our show. Now, Grow Clinics is where your journey to hair restoration begins. At Grow Clinics, they understand the impact hair loss can have on your confidence and well-being. That's why they've invested in state-of-the-art technology and assembled a team of experts dedicated to delivering exceptional results. Their personalised approach ensures each treatment plan is tailored to your unique needs and goals. So whether you're experiencing the early signs of hair loss or you're seeking to restore a fuller, thicker head of hair, Grow Clinics can help you.
Take the first step today towards regaining your confidence. Schedule your free consultation at growclinics.com.au. That's growclinics.com.au and tell them Brown Park sent ya.
This is the Brown Park Podcast with Christo and Dion.
I want to step back into your teenage years being different, I guess, to everyone else. I mean, did your mental health suffer through your teenage years, or did swimming just help you get through that and it wasn't massively on your radar?
Yeah, I don't think the mental health stuff got massively on my radar until I finished school and later into my competing life. I think because I was that distracted and that focused on wanting to achieve well and challenge myself in both levels of school and sport, I didn't really think twice of it. I had a really good, strong support network, psych services available to me as an athlete, all that sort of stuff. So I didn't really have time to think twice of it. And it's more of because of my hearing, social situations for me. It's definitely not my strong suit. Even today when I go to functions and everything and, there's 600 people in one room, we all sit at a table. I'm just God, I hope they're long tables, sitting next to each other that way instead of circle tables in a function area. Probably one of my biggest fears, purely because I can hear what's happening on my left. I can hear what's going on a little bit over this side, but then the person who's sitting on my right and that half of the table, it's just a no-go for a conversation, or if they try to talk to me or if I try to be involved in it, it's something that I'm still feel like I'm a almost 30-year-old man, and having a conversation with people sometimes scares me because I don't want to make myself look like an idiot, which is a stupid thing to be saying when, I get up in front of the world and swim in a pair of DTs. So,
good point.
But that's the situation that I get in. So that's kind of what happened. And, and then the mental health side of stuff sort of just comes in with your sport and, the amount of pressure that you start putting on yourself. And as I sort of getting to those, you sort of hit all those perfect highs that everything goes well for you. And that's how you wanted it to go. You kind of just keep getting used to that. And, I spent 10, 11 years at the top of my game in the 400 freestyle. And then, 2019, I came second by half a finger, not even that. And so in my world, I lost. And so, while I lost with the silver medal, and that was really hard to accept in 2019. And so I was like, all right, I've got to change some things and make sure I end up on top again by the time Tokyo comes around. And then COVID hit. And so it's just a kind of a constant spiral that an athlete sort of goes into to keep going and wanting to keep going. I was like, I'm still going to try and make my Tokyo perfect if it is postponed and everything. And it was postponed and happened, did not go to any way that I had planned it, dreamt it, focused on it, how I had envisioned it. And that's when I hit the ultimate low. So, there are times where those sort of things are tough and you have to sort of try and talk to people about it.
Tokyo, then what were you hoping for? And obviously it didn't live up to the.
I'm going to say he's hoping for a gold medal.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, What? How did it go wrong for you? Apart from not winning a gold medal, obviously.
Yeah, I still honestly don't know. I think at the point I had become so driven and so focused on. At the end of the day, I knew sport it's only a period of my life. At the end of the day, it was just swimming. I always kind of knew that. But I was when you sort of go to a Paralympic sport or an Olympic sport, going back to back to back, back to back is usually pretty common. Back to back to back is pretty uncommon. It's not an everyday thing that not everyone manages to do. So I was hoping to try and go for that 3-peat in 400 free, and that was the ultimate dream, I guess. And I was I had made all these changes and everything was going on track to sort of be able to do that. And I hadn't been swimming as fast as I'd been swimming since 2012 when I broke the world record, and then 2013 I was on track to swim a lot faster than that. So in my head I was like, cool, everything's going the way I wanted it to. I wanted to go sweet, and I was like, I just need to relax and let everything do its job. Yeah, unfortunately, I think I had built it up so much in my head that by the time I come to swim the race, the pressure I'd pretty much already swum my race before I'd even managed to actually swim my race. And mentally that had sucked all the energy out of me, so that when I actually had to swim the race, I actually had no energy left to give. And as a result of that, it did not go. The first time I wasn't able to follow a race plan. I literally just swam, but the whole time I was swimming, I felt absolutely shot. And obviously that resulted me in getting 4th place in the 400 free, I think by also a finger. So at that point I would have been I would have been happy with a bronze medal. I would have been happy to walk away with a medal. But I walked away with a 4th place, and that was it. I got out of the pool. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I sat there. When we have to put our legs back on, there's a photo of me sitting there with the other 3 guys in the race who I'm good friends with. They're laughing and chatting. I'm sitting there with pretty much my head in my hands, looking down at the ground, not wanting to barb anything. I walk off, congratulate my mates through media area who had medalled, and walked through, didn't talk to the media person, didn't talk to anyone, didn't really want to. People stopped me to say good swim and everything. I said thank you and moved on. I had a chat to my coach, literally didn't talk to anybody, jumped in the pool, warmed down, and I buggered off as soon as I got out of the pool and went back to the village, had dinner. And at that point, I'd spoken to my wife a couple of times, who was pregnant at home. And then when I got back to the village, I spoke to mum and dad. But I broke down in my room for a bit. Didn't want to talk to anyone else in the team. I know a few boys won a few medals that night, and I congratulated them when I walked in, but that was it. I didn't want any other bar of conversation that was going on within the team that day, and I had to I was up in 2 days' time again to try and race, but I think at that point I'd already gone too far down the rabbit hole. It was just impossible for me to mentally come back to race at the physical level that I wanted to race for the rest of my swims. So unfortunately, because that was on day 1, it just pretty much cursed the rest of my meet. And there were a couple of times on the bus when I was by myself going to the pool mid-heat after my second shit swim. I was like, I think I said to my coach, I want to go home. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to be on this team. I'm pretty much a fucking joke. I should just go home, be done with it now. I was pretty much crying on the bus to and from the pool, probably 3 days. At the end of the meet as well, after I finished, I'd purposely make sure I'd sort of get on the bus myself or sit by myself. There were a few times I kind of had to pull myself back a bit. But at that point I was like, I didn't care. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Didn't want to see anybody. I just wanted to go home. I was done.
It sounds lonely.
Did not want a bar of swimming. Did not want a bar of sport. Nothing. Didn't care, honestly.
Yeah, fine.
So that was Tokyo.
Yep, that was Tokyo for me. Great fun time. So, fun time where we were living the COVID games life of no dining hall, no interactions with other teams, all that sort of stuff, very strict protocols. So that was also good fun. And I think, that really put all the icing on the cake for me. Would have been a fantastic games, I reckon, otherwise. But I think you wrote COVID into all of it. And then on top of that, I would probably have some of the worst performances of my entire career when I was 100%. 110% in the fittest shape of my life I had ever been as an athlete. It just did not go the way I wanted it to go. Didn't want to bar of anything. And when I got back, we were in hotel quarantine for 2 weeks.
Oh, Jesus.
More time in your thoughts.
More time in your thoughts, where people were, getting ready for doing school talks with kids. They're like, hey, put your hand up. Usually I'm all for that stuff. I love being able to do that and chat to kids and everything, but I did not respond to any one of those emails. I didn't respond to a couple of uni emails asking me when I'd be back. I had a uni assignment to do, which I sort of just did on day in, day out on a basis just to sort of keep my head going. But I didn't want to talk to anyone about swimming or anything for those 2 weeks, but I was happy exercising in my room and doing any other exercise apart from swimming. I was loving it. It was just that point of I didn't want to talk to anyone about my performance or how I'd gone or what experience it was, because to me it was just shit. It wasn't even an experience. To me, at the end of the day, it was a waste of time.
But I guess that's again, back to what you're saying there. The flip side of COVID was when you were going through Tokyo and not performing to your own expectations, and then, like I say, throwing COVID into it where you didn't have anybody else to really connect with. Were you in your own room, and did you have a have a cellmate, or what did you call it?
Yes. So we had flats in Tokyo. So the Australian team was confined to the Australian team building. So we vigorous COVID testing protocols to get in there, that sort of stuff. And, all the areas were open for all teams to go to, but the Australian team, to sort of remain COVID safe the whole time, we were told that we were stationed in our building, and that was it. That's all where we could go. We had roommates. So I had my roommate who I'd been with since 2008. We've been rooming together, who I'm very thankful for. He sort of helped me back a little bit here and there at the end. He had his last Paralympic Games experience as a swimmer, and he had a successful meet for himself. So I was stoked for him to sort of be able to finish his Paralympic swimming experience like that. And so he's at the end of the day, it's all about perspective. And he sort of reminded me of all that. I had a wife at home who was pregnant. So I guess at the end of the day, the gold medal didn't matter in the end, but to me, personally, you set yourself those little goals, and everyone goes about trying to achieve those goals however they want to. I know the bar is very high when you want to win a world gold medal. It's quite a hard bar, but it's sort of at the end of the day, family is the most important thing, and make sure that support's there. And he sort of reminded me about that, and I was very thankful for that.
I mean, to be honest, you've got 17 gold, 8 silver, 7 bronze. You're doing all right.
Yeah, look, doing all right, but another one would have been nice,
Have you now hung up? You're not doing it anymore, or are you going for the next one, or what are you?
I got back and I had a chat to my coach, and at the end of the day, when I got back out of quarantine, I had a chat with him, and I came to the decision of I can't hang up my goggles on that, just because that doesn't sit well with me mentally. At the end of the day, some people don't get to choose to walk away, but I think that the way my body's been going, I feel like I'm still going to be able to have that choice, and sort of just to make a poor choice on a bad result. That's that'll sit wrong with me at the end. So I was like, look, I'm just going to come back to train for a bit, try and actually find why I love this sport again.
Yeah.
And just getting back on a day-to-day basis and into the training is made me realize wait a minute, it's not fighting for the gold medals or traveling away with a team, but as the draw card for me for these things. It's literally just getting in the water and swimming and doing something that I love. And I was I still love the day-to-day grind of the journey of being in the pool and putting in the hard work. And so I was all right, I'll do state champs at the end of that year and see if I've still got a bit of competitive mongrel in me, which, mind you, was probably not the best time to sort of test whether I have a competitive mongrel when my son was due to be born that week. So, but no, thankfully he came a bit earlier, and I was like, can I sneak this race in? And I was lucky enough to be able to sneak the race in, and I was I did the race and I was pretty happy with myself. I felt good, and I loved being able to race. And then I was nah, I've still got some mongrel in me. Let's give it another crack. And so, that's where I was at the end of last year. And so then I was all right, let's get on this competitive train. I've only got 3 years now. So I've decided to go, hopefully, to try and make the opportunity of going to Paris.
Good job. And look, I just want to say that remove all the medals and everything that you want to achieve there. What can't be sort of pushed under the rug is the amount of inspiration you give to the younger kids that may be in a position that you were back when you were 6. You saw somebody that gave you that dream. So whilst if you weren't to get a medal, I think you're adding more value to the world just by showing up.
100%. I think when I do all the school talks, I love it. And at the end of the day, they're probably a bit more interested in the lake than the medal sometimes. But, either one works, doesn't really matter. I think it's just trying to put that spark into a kid's mind of that they can go on and try and dream and achieve whatever they want to. It doesn't have to be sport. It can just be anything. I'm just lucky that mine was sport, I guess, and I had that opportunity. But I think if just more people can be seen and be made more aware, and then it's also in the disability space as well, it's just kind of you don't really get into it to become an advocate, but once you sort of start making a bit of an appearance here and there, people are oh yeah, you're doing good things, and you don't really notice it, but you don't really notice it until you get towards the end of your career and after you finish. So it's like I'm not going to just shy away from a challenge because I was unhappy with my results. I'm pretty sure like people are unhappy with their results whenever. Like if a company's underperforming for a month, well then what are we going to do to fix it? Just find a way to move forward and get better. So for me, it was just a matter of finding that enjoyment, finding the love again, and just finding that little bit of a spark back inside me. And hopefully it's on its way back and we'll be there when the time counts.
I want to ask one quick question just before we let you go. How does sponsorship work? Because there's always that thing with, some swimmers, both able-bodied and Paralympians. Sponsorship is hard. How do you survive wanting to be a swimmer, wanting to be and represent Australia and still have an income? Do you have to go and have a day job as well, or do you have enough sponsorship on board, or, like you said, the sponsorship of mum and dad has carried you through, or how does it work? Because a lot of athletes complain there's not enough money to do what they love to do.
100%, but at the end of the day, swimming's not the only sport that sort of struggles with that kind of area. You've also got like gymnastics, or even some other people in athletics. We're all really tightly strapped for money, and there are some lucky ones out there who get that fantastic opportunity of a sponsorship. And I've been trying to chase sponsorship for the last
29 years.
let's say 29 years. Let's go with that. No, since 2012, I've had a few dabble in and dabble out, but since 2014, nothing. At the end of the day, in para sport, even in Olympic sport, you kind of have to be one of the lucky ones who has managed to have all those connections somewhere here and there, and to even just get a manager, it's a bit of an effort to try and get those sponsors. It's like almost impossible sometimes, and at the end of the day, I think I gave up in 2017 trying to get sponsors because I'd written that many letters and sent to different people that everyone just kept saying, "No, sorry, not right now." And that's just how it is. It's a brutal world of sport is how I like to put it. Some people like you, some people just don't want to bet on you and see what you can bring to the table. It's just that sort of thing that happens. But yeah, some of us are lucky, but I'm not one of those people. So I'm studying to be a physiotherapist. It was one of the first things that we were told when we made the team in 2008 by the head coach back then. He's like, now make sure you've got a fallback plan, because you don't get into Paralympic sport to make a living. You get into Paralympic sport purely because of the enjoyment and the love of the sport and the pride of representing your country. If you're in it for the money, you're in it for the wrong reasons. It's that conversation that's kind of stuck with me. I've always made sure that there's a backup plan in the works. So that's kind of been my process. And unfortunately, not really one of the lucky ones to have a sponsorship land in my lap. So that's where we're at.
So how long have you got to go with your degree?
I've got 2 years to go. So the plan is to hopefully finish my swimming career, finish my degree, and then I should be good to go.
Perfect. So Paris 24, right?
Paris in 2024.
Well, Brenden Hall, we wish you all the very best. I hope you find a sponsor.
Just a little bit here or there. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. How do people find you, Brenden, if they want to reach out for sponsorship?
I'm on Instagram. That's the easiest way to find me. Brenden Hall 93. It's pretty sure that's the year I was born. So, I stand out. There's a guy in the photo with one leg. So, that should be
that'll do. I like the joke too. Nicely done. Brenden Hall, champion Paralympian. Thank you very much for joining us on the Brown Park podcast, mate.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
The Brown Park Podcast.
Why are you happy?
Because I don't want to be sad.